probably exactly what all the students, how many students do we have here? Any students out there? Great, okay, you know, it's been a while, but I probably did just what you guys have to do. Didn't get a whole lot of warm-up time, was out there, I noodle-doodled out on the balcony for those of you that saw me out there. I was going to it outside, practicing a little bit, came in here, waited, and then got started. Things that are written about this etude and things that I want to do when I am actually performing is, you know, all the things that your band director has been teaching you. You want to start right away and make sure that you know some ideas about this piece. You knew it was slow, it's expressive. So being an expressive piece, they're giving you sort of dramatic license. They're saying, do something, be yourself, but try to bring yourself out, which I know is not an easy thing to do. But with help, doing some tape recording, etc., you will be able to start to see when you do something yourself. You don't have to be exactly the same as someone else. You don't have to do mine. You can go in a crescendo to a place that is most comfortable for you. So it's marked sweetly, dolce. Everybody here knows what that is. And then the other thing that we're going to find in here is the phrasing is really going to take a lot of full air, because we're going to have a lot of different technical things that we're going to have to do with our trills and with these large slurs, that if we don't have a compact air system really moving forward, air is compact right behind that tongue, ready to move forward, then we have problems happen. We think it's, you know, our embouchure's not responding, but generally, most of the time when we have problems with going from note to note, it's just a matter of no fuel. The embouchure didn't get the air, and then it can't work. You guys are lucky. You're really young. Your muscles are new. Sometimes you can make it happen. I can't do that anymore. I've got too many years under my belt here, too many performances, so I absolutely have to use all my air. Some just general practice ideas are written there on that first page for you. Practice your G major scale, of course, and also practice your E minor scale. You start on E, but there's one sharp, just the F sharp in there. You can add the D sharp in. Doing your long tones at the beginning of every day. If you saw my clinic that I did at TMEA this year, I really advocate you working on those long tones, feeling like the air is moving all the way through to the end, just so you know how the air feels, you know how you feel. Instead of picking up your horn and doing the same thing that you do every single time, see if you are moving and if you're wiggling too much. You have to think about that thing. Thinking about the eighth note pulse. So if you're looking at this, I want you to be able to start thinking actually in eight. So I'm going to start at the very beginning of the piece, and I'm just going to count through it. We have our turns written out, so we're going to go 1, 2, 3, lolly, 4. Oh, I'm sorry, let me see it again. I've got to concentrate. 1, 2, 3, triplet, 4 and 5, 6 and a 7, 8, 1, 2 and a 3 and 4 and 5, 6, 7 trill, 1. I'm going to start trying to count all those things so that I am really sure where I'm at. I've written out in my examples, I've written it out in 8/4, so that for some of you to just start getting used to it, you can look at it just with a quarter note pulse to kind of give you a little bit easier way through that. But that's something that we really need to do. All the grace notes, I think, should be in front of the beat, so they all should have had a slash through it. I played all of them before the beat. They're not marked that way. Being a really good classical player, I would have said, well, they're not all marked with the slash through the grace note. Only the one on measure 5 has got the actual slash through it. And then they stopped doing that, so it really should be on the beat, but I don't think so. I think this is just an error. When you're looking at my copy, this is from when I was a student. These are my teacher's marks in here, so please get a clean copy. So when we're looking at measure 7 going to 8, I put a little slash at the bottom. You're actually supposed to tongue the F sharp. At one time, I let my air compression go too far, and my teacher said, keep the air moving, Peggy, let's keep this going. Don't drop the phrase right there. So that's one of my marks. And you'll see some of my marks in here, so just kind of disregard that as you're, look at a nice clean copy. I did put some breaths in there, but we'll talk about those. The collando at the end of measure 8, this means to slow down and also diminish in sound. So hopefully you got a little bit of that while I was playing. I was trying to get softer and slower. And then I tried to jump right back in at the A tempo. So go back to the tempo that you were starting at. The trills. All the trills, or most of the trills that we have there, measure 2. It's a B natural should be, say, a C natural, but somehow there's a typo there. It says from a B to a D. It's a B to a C. It's just a half-step trill. When you're going half steps, if you're looking at the piano, or on your horn, you're going up chromatically, a half step is a finger trill, always a finger trill. And then the same thing when we have in measure 3, we have F sharp to G. That's a finger trill. So you're just going to do 2 to open with your trigger from B natural to C, or just fingering. But when you get down onto the next one, which is measure 12, you could do it with just your lip. Now, this is a skill you have to develop. You have to actually practice at this to kind of get this going. Most of us, when we start learning to do our lip trills, we do a valve trill and then we do a lip trill. So you're going to practice fingering. So this actual trill is from D to E. So that then after a while you can do it with just your lip. And you're going to move those 2 notes. If you thought about being nervous and going, yeah, that'll get your trill going. Because this is the one time you actually do move your jaw just a little bit while you're playing. And that's how you would do it. All the trills kind of slow and then speed it up and then get into your 2 grace notes at the end. So you can have kind of a suave feeling to that. Now you have a lot of breaths in here, and I went through and said I would do this one, I wouldn't do that one. I'm not going to spend the time looking at that right now, okay, because I think that all of you can look at that and figure out what you're doing. Some of the hard parts for some of you will be figuring out what you're going to do in the articulation. We've got some turns here, and if you look at the sheet that I have marked for you of all these practice ideas, and I wrote out what you're going to do, you're thinking about moving air and keeping it nice and full the whole way through, which means that I'm actually going to, when I see how it's written, it says at the top of the page there, it says measure 1, and then it has A and then B. That's actually how it's written. It's a 1, triplet, 2, and if we were counting the eighths. And then I wrote it out for you, how you want to move your air through. So even though we have, I want to make sure I don't go. And I want to keep my air moving through that 16th note triplet. I want to almost feel like I'm crescendo. And I would practice that numerous times. I would not practice the whole thing. I would just look at those little parts. Because what you want to do is you want to link together all these good little pieces. Then you have your whole. If you always start at the beginning and go to the end, you have a lot of, okay, I'm a long distance runner and I'm just looking at starting well and getting over the finish line. We want more than that. This has got to be really specialized. So I went through and I wrote these all out for you so you can slowly practice them. And a lot of it is just, can you keep your air moving as you're moving your fingers? Sometimes, and I know it's true with almost everyone that plays a brass instrument, we start like fingering like crazy, and for some reason when we go into this thing stops working. So you really want to be practicing, like doing your wind pattern. I'm blowing air as I'm thinking about just fingering. And when you're getting ready for your turn, this is like the best thing that you can do quietly so you don't disturb anyone else. But it's just doing your wind pattern, so it's Arnold Jacobs calls this blowing air forward in the rhythm that you're going to have, and practicing your fingers as you're going through. The one turn that's a little bit different is the one that's on the 5th line there, measure 11. A little bit more ornate because you're starting on that D and moving around up to that F natural. Something that you just kind of have to work on each one of these. I'm not a stand-up and perform kind of person. I've already had back surgery, so I'll just do some of the little exercises while I'm standing, and then I'll sit back down when I'm going to continue on. So if you look at that measure 11 turn, I would have started out with just doing the turn and ending on the D. Making sure that my air is moving forward. It really, as they always say, it's not rocket science, but it's really hard to stop yourself from going, I just do the whole thing. I want to see what it sounds like as a whole big piece. But if you can take the time and have the patience to look at that. We also have these large slurs. And to practice the large slurs, and this is the way I teach everything, it's all air motivated. Most students already have enough embouchure work that they have done over the years. If you can buzz it, you can play it. So most of you all also can go through this whole thing and you can buzz it on your mouthpiece. But I want you to think about how your air moves. So when you're doing a leap and you're going higher, if you can imagine, you're holding your old hose out there from the backyard and you turn it on and you want it to go faster, what do? You could go back and turn it up higher, but most of us are going to just move our thumb across that water hose and it's going to spray out. It's exactly what's happening. You don't have to make the air go faster just on that high note, because what's happening is the air I've already had on that low note is moving forward, and now my aperture, the inside part, has gotten smaller. So that air should be moving. What we sometimes do is we kind of do the, I'm in, your standard transmission, and you like start putting it into, neutral. No, this is not the time to put it in neutral. You have to imagine you're in Huntsville and you're driving up all these hills. You can't. You need to be in gear here. You have to wait longer. You keep that air moving forward. So when I'm playing like measure 6, I'm going to go really slowly. I'm going to play E, G, as I'm practicing it, and I'm going to step into that bottom note with more air, and I'm going to tongue them. I want to go ba, beep. Even if I don't play the top note louder, it's still going to come out louder. It's sort of like when you've been in band and you hear that piccolo. They don't usually say more piccolo, because the higher you go, the more it carries. It's when we're playing in our medium range, our 6th grade range, C to C, they're always going, more horns, and we're like, this is not the best place for us. So this is something that you're going to work on. Then I would change it around. I do half note to a quarter, and I still tongue. And then I go to my slur. And make sure my air keeps moving. If I have, and I clutch, you can hear that little place where I kind of let the air just sort of go into neutral and I wasn't moving it forward. I know you want to be right, so I just take my mouthpiece back out and bliss through it. And see where I'm at. To jump from this spot to that spot, doing ba, ba, we really would rather have you do the slur motion and gradually let your embouchure come in. So it's easier on your embouchure. It's that whole idea of shifting. You don't want to go from 1st gear into 4th gear. It ruins the engine. And that's kind of what you're doing when you're doing over an octave slur there. Then later on, you're just going to do it quarter. Very, very simple. When you're looking at measure 7, you've got all this stuff going on, and you got to remember your C sharp through the whole thing, and then all of a sudden you have an A sharp, and for some reason A sharp is just a hard, weird note for us. If they would have written it, I know, and someone's already laughing, would have written it as B flat, would not be a problem. If they didn't want to crunch up all those notes into that little tiny space, would not be a problem if they would have written it as 8th notes, like I wrote it out for you, rather than 16th notes and 32nd notes, because like we're not woodwind players and we're not used to this. Just something we have to get used to. We get over this and we start to see this. It's in orchestral music. So as you're playing this, you need to slow it down, and then you need to change the rhythm. So I have just what's written there, only written with an 8th note pattern instead of having 16ths. And I've changed it. Instead of slurring the way it's written, I simplified it for a couple of times. And I'll probably have my students be playing this for like 2 weeks, simplified. And if they start playing it for me and go, oh, Dr. Demers, but I can play it the way it's written, I'm like, that's really nice, but I want to see air moving forward. The other is good, and I'm sure that you can do it, but this is kind of practicing, looking at the same piece of art over and over again so that you can actually love it. Some of us love our phones. We don't mind getting our phone out. We look at it, it may be dirty, our OtterBox looks like whatever, but we go, oh yay! I want you to look at this music that way. So we're going to kind of turn it every which way. So here you are just changing your rhythms. So change it, do a dotted A16. And now in your next excerpt, there is an editor error. I made a mistake. I'm really sorry. So you have a little dotted line there. The last note of the measure should be a G. It shouldn't be an F sharp. And now you're just going to change the rhythm. Instead of going short, long, you do the opposite. Long, short, long, short, long. So I keep my air moving. That's a much harder rhythm to do for most of my students. They don't like that one. And then go back to what you were doing before. There's a couple other things that are in here that will catch your attention. We have in measure 11 and 12, we have the staccato with the slur. So we call that the singing staccato. So you want to imagine that other than the nice crisp style that you can do in band, which is like amazing when you're playing staccato, singers, they don't sing that way. They don't go jingle bells, jingle bells. They can't do that. It just doesn't make any sense. So it has to have a little bit more ring to it. So as you're doing this, I always think of sort of this military band style for different articulation. And this is da, 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 da. There is a definition of the note, but there's more. Instead of having a nice block wedge sound at the beginning and the end, a little bit more of the taper, da at the end of each one of the notes. And your directors will help you with that. Not a real problem. The dynamics, it's really quite soft at the very beginning, right? It says piano, and then we don't have anything until we get going there a while, until we're actually moving up through the crescendo in measure 7, then we go up to mezzo forte. So save yourself. I know when we get in these things that say expressive, we're like, okay, go get them. Play out. Well, play out with your intensity. Play out with your feeling of line. Try to just add a few more things in with what you're doing with your air, but don't add quantity to it yet. Try to hold back just a little. Put the nuances in there as you're going through, so that you can kind of get that a little bit better. And then when you get to the forte, forte just means full. I know when you're playing in the big group, sometimes the whole band, they want a little more from certain players than other players, but still a real pretty sound. This is not, you know, the bell should not shake and there should be no rattling going on. So just a real big, pretty, full sound. Fun piece. I hope you're going to like that one. I love it. We're going to go on to the next one. So this is number 43.